Hey guys, how's it going? Jacob here. Today I'm going to be doing something a bit different, and it is completely 100% not Pokemon related. Don't get me wrong, I love Pokemon, but I have other passions, and I'd like to try to do something different. In today's episode of whatever it's going to be, I'm going to live up to my username. There is a reason I go by Time Lord Jacob on YouTube and various other platforms. Is because I'm a big fan of Doctor Who. I think it is a very great franchise. I think it's really cool that it's gone on for more than 50 years. I just love the whole lore behind it. There's pretty much not a doctor that I have not liked in some way, shape, or form, and I just really would like to be able to talk about it. It's not going to be the main thing I do on the channel, but it is something that I really want to do in general because it's something that I never really get to talk about because not too many of my friends like it. So I figure this is a good outlet for me to try to talk about it. So today I'm going to be talking about my in general, it's just going to focus on the new Who, like 2005 onward. I think that I'm pretty well knowledged about the classic era, which I'll talk about in later videos, but today I'm just going to be talking about the new series, starting with Christopher Eccleston. So today I'm going to be talking about my favorite series premiere, my favorite series finale, and my favorite series overall when it comes to its arc. Because I feel like each series has its own great things. Each doctor brings his own greatness to the table. But I feel like there are certain things where it comes down to more than just the doctor itself. It comes down to, the writing or just how all the characters interacted with each other. So I feel like it's good to talk about each thing because it's hard to say which series is my favorite in general because, like I said, each series brings its own thing. But I definitely think that when you focus on the overall story from a series, then you could focus on that a lot. So let's go ahead and get started talking about my favorite series premiere. There are a couple that really come to mind when it comes to my favorite series premiere. I would say probably one that's a good contender is Series 5, Matt Smith's first episode, The 11th Hour. I thought that was really interesting seeing him just all of a sudden stuck in the TARDIS. It's flying all over the place and he has no control, and then he crashes in young Amelia Pond's garden, and then how he has to try to get the TARDIS fixed, but he's also trying to deal with the whole Prisoner Zero incident. And he's like, okay, I just need to hop into the future real fast. I'll be back in 5 minutes. But then how something went wrong, and then it was 12 years later. And then at that point, Amy is a lot older, and she thought that the doctor was imaginary, and she was so confused as to why this person that she thought was imaginary is here. And then it turns out that everyone knew who the doctor was because of Amy's imagination, but they didn't think it was real. And then how he only had 20 minutes to save the universe. Basically, the description was he had no TARDIS, no sonic screwdriver, because at one point the TARDIS ended up phasing away because it still needed to repair itself. It wasn't complete. So he didn't have access to the TARDIS and the various technology in there. And then his sonic screwdriver had gotten burnt out from overuse and from being attacked by Prisoner Zero. And I think overall the finale was, or the premiere I mean, was pretty good. I think that it is definitely a worthy contender, but I don't know if it's my favorite. Another one definitely comes from Series 6, The Impossible Astronaut, because of the fact that you see how it starts with they're at Lake Silencio, and it starts off with the doctor dying. I thought that was something where it's like you would not have expected that for the series premiere to start off with that. And I like how it's like it ends where it's like, okay, now we can go on doing what we were doing, but it's like Amy and Rory still know what's happening, but the younger doctor, who hadn't been killed yet, doesn't know. So they're like, what do? We can't bring it up. So then how that kind of lingers on. And I like the idea of how they introduced the silence, how they were there for all of humanity, and then how like they were actually there before humanity basically. So the doctor's like, this isn't an invasion. They were here before us. And then I like the whole thing about how the moon landing, how they played that part where it's like they had the recording of the silence saying you should kill us all on sight, and then how they played that during the moon landing. That way, like everyone, whoever saw the video, would know about the silence, even though they would forget it. It would be in their mind, like in their subconscious. So every time they would see a silent, they would know that they needed to kill it, even though they didn't quite know why. So that's definitely a worthy contender as well. But then I feel like let's go ahead and get to my actual favorite series premiere It is going to be Series 9, the two-parter known as The Magician's Apprentice and The Witch's Familiar. I just actually really like it so much because you completely got to see a different side of Peter Capaldi as the Doctor. Series 8, it was so much of the Doctor trying to find himself. He didn't really know who he was. He was always wondering, am I a good man? I don't really know who I am anymore. He kind of questioned himself. So I thought that here it was nice because it felt like he finally settled into who he was. He knew what kind of person he wanted to be, and then you got to see him playing a guitar while riding on a tank in like the 12th century. I thought that was pretty funny. And then I know that some people are all upset that the Doctor didn't use a sonic screwdriver anymore. I personally actually really like the sonic sunglasses. I thought that was really cool how it's like he doesn't have a screwdriver anymore, but he still has a sonic device. And I just thought that the 12th Doctor always looks so cool in the sunglasses. I just thought that it was really interesting. I thought it was pretty funny, especially because it's Peter Capaldi, that old codger, doing it. I thought that it was pretty funny. And I liked the dynamic between Clara and Missy, who, you know, is the master. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, but if you're watching this, I feel like you have. Excuse me. And I just really liked how you had to see them work together, even though Clara knows that Missy is still basically evil, but in a way, she's like, I still care about the Doctor, even though I tried to kill him, he's still my friend. And I like seeing that interaction where it's like you see Clara not with the Doctor, but with Missy instead. And they're trying to avoid getting killed by the Daleks. They're trying to get back into the center of Skaro because they want to try to help the Doctor because he's stuck there on his own. And I also, actually, I would say probably one of my favorite things is the interactions between the Doctor and Davros, because the episode starts off with the Doctor on Skaro, but he doesn't know that's where he is, and he sees a child in the middle of a battlefield, and he's trying to help him. He's surrounded by hand mines, you know, like hands with eyes on them, and they'll like pull you down, and then he's trying to save him, but then he asked the kid his name, and the kid said Davros, and the Doctor was so shocked he didn't know what to do. He's like, I don't want to leave an innocent child, but I also know this is Davros, one of the most evil beings in the universe, who creates the Daleks. So he left. But then what happens is, over time, eventually, you know, the timelines catch up, and then Davros remembers that that's the Doctor. He was able to piece it together that that person he encountered a long time ago was the Doctor. And then you find out that Davros is getting so old that he's about to die. So then he decides to try to lure the Doctor in one more time because he wants to have that final confrontation and possibly still try to have one final victory. And then you think that by the end of the episode that Clara and Missy got killed by the Daleks, to which point the Doctor had like no mercy left for Davros. He was saying, why have I ever let you live? And Davros was saying, compassion is a weakness. He's like, this is my final victory. I just want you to know that compassion is wrong. But then in the next episode, it seemed like the Doctor wasn't quite convinced that Clara and Missy were dead. But then, whenever he was trying to confront the Daleks, then Davros's assistant, let's call him that, Colony Sarv, ended up restraining the Doctor. So then he ended up back in Davros's waiting room. And then you saw them have a really deep conversation. Like, the Doctor was talking about how the Time Lords are still alive. He never actually killed them. He managed to find a way to actually bring them back. And then Davros was talking about saying, no matter what, try to protect your own people, as I've protected mine. So I thought that was a really interesting way of seeing Davros in a different light, where it's not necessarily just that he created the Daleks because he wanted them to be powerful and evil. It was his way of trying to preserve his own people because, you know, before the Khalids, the ancestors of the Daleks, were in a war with the Thals, and Davros decided to create the Daleks from, you know, the Khalid DNA because he wanted his people to prosper, he wanted them to win, he wanted them to achieve greatness. So I thought that was interesting how he was saying then, like, did I do right? Am I a good man? And I know that in the end, it turns out that Davros was also doing a ploy to try to trick the Doctor. But I feel like, in a certain way, some of what Davros was saying was genuine, saying, like, protect your own people by any means. Like, everyone should have a people and an allegiance. Like, you need to belong somewhere. And then how Davros opened his eyes. Like, honestly, I never even thought about the fact that his eyes were like stuck closed. I thought they were just like decayed and stuff. But then he managed to open his eyes to look the Doctor in the face. And then he was talking about how he wanted to see the sunlight, but then how his eyes were stuck closed eventually. So then the Doctor decided to give him some regeneration energy so that he could open his eyes. But then it turns out the whole time that Davros's plan was to have the Doctor's regeneration energy siphon to restore his lifespan. And then it turns out that Davros was feeding off the life energy of every Dalek on Skaro. And since Davros was absorbing the regeneration energy, so was every Dalek. Which then Davros said that all of the Daleks then became half Time Lord because they were renewed by regeneration energy. And I remember watching that and I was actually terrified. Like, oh no, the Daleks are part Time Lord now because they've been regenerated like that. But then it turns out that the Doctor was actually planning on that the whole time. He actually knew what was going to happen. And he knew that the sewers of Skaro were decaying Daleks because, as you found out earlier, the Daleks never actually die, but they do continue to age, so they're all decaying. And then what happened was the regeneration energy went to literally every Dalek, not just ones in the casings going around shouting exterminate. It was all the decaying ones down there in the sewers as well. So that ended up tearing the building apart, and that's how the Doctor escaped. So in general, I just thought it was really cool. I thought the way they built it up was amazing. It almost felt like it was a movie. It felt like it's so cool because you wouldn't have expected that to be a series premiere. I just thought that it looked really great, and in the end, over time, it just became my favorite series premiere. Now, I feel like we need to talk about my favorite series finales. I feel like there are definitely good contenders because it's the series finale. Like, it's always going to come down to something good. You know, you have series 1 where it turns out that the Daleks survived, like part of the Daleks survived the Time War and the Emperor, and then you saw Rose, like you saw the whole Bad Wolf thing come through, and then how Rose came back to save the Doctor. And then in series 2 you have Daleks versus Cybermen. That was really cool seeing them together for the first time like that. And then the Doctor and Rose got separated, one of the most heartbreaking moments. And then series 3, the Return of the Master. Series 4, the Return of Davros. Series 5, the whole thing with the Pandorica and Amy and Rory's wedding. Series 6, you have the whole thing with the silence coming through. Series 7, the thing about Trenzalore, that leading up. Series 8, Missy, how it turns out she's the Master. Series 9, the whole thing about the hybrid and the Doctor on Gallifrey. And then Series 10, how it ended with Bill dying and being turned into a Cyberman. And then you saw two Masters, and then the Doctor refusing to regenerate. All of them are very good contenders, but I feel like when it comes down to it, I would say if I had to pick a top 2, I would say Series 3 and Series 4. And I'm just going to go ahead and spoil it for you. My number 1 is going to be Series 4, but I'm going to explain why Series 3 is good. Series 3 is good because of the fact that the whole time, so many events that happened to the Doctor and Martha were actually being manipulated by the Master, but the Doctor wasn't able to pick up on it because of a perception filter. Like, all this time you would hear about Mr. Saxon, and then, like, how he's the Prime Minister, and then by the time of Utopia, it turns out that Professor Yana was actually the Master who made himself human to escape the Time War, in a similar way to how the Doctor made himself human in the episodes Human Nature and The Family of Blood. And then how the Master returns, where it's like, this is the first time we see another Time Lord in the show besides the Doctor. And it came back in such a big way, how it turns out the Master became Prime Minister. And then fun fact, something I found out was whenever you rearrange the letters in Mr. Saxon, you get Master number 6, because John Sim was, in a way, the 6th person to play the Master on TV, which I thought was a fun little tidbit there. But then how the Master took over the planet, and then the Doctor, Martha, and the return of Captain Jack, which was also really cool, they had to go into hiding because the Master declared them enemies of the state, basically, and wanted their arrest. And then how also the Master had stolen the TARDIS, so he had that technology, and the Doctor barely managed to get back to present day using Jack's vortex manipulator. But then how it turns out that what happened was they tried to get on board the Valiant, which is a unit ship, because the Master was declaring that he had come into first contact with aliens called the Toclafane, but the Doctor was saying, okay, that's just a myth from Gallifrey. What are these creatures really? And then how whenever they're on the ship, the Master reveals himself, and then he was saying, oh, he really thought a perception filter was going to work on me because they tried to hide using a perception filter. So then he had security grab the Doctor and bring him forward. And then what happened was you saw that the Master used his laser screwdriver, because who'd have Sonic, to age the Doctor, because he also managed to obtain the Doctor's hand that he got cut off in a sword fight. So he aged him 100 years so that he was this old man who looked really ancient. And then Jack was on board the ship, but he gave Martha his vortex manipulator so that she could escape. And then before Martha left, the Doctor gave her a message on what to do. And at first you thought that by the next episode, you see that for the past year, Martha has been traveling the world to obtain different components for a gun, because you thought that the Doctor told her about this gun that would be able to kill a Time Lord without them regenerating. And she was back in London to try to obtain the final component, and she had developed some allies who were trying to help her out all underground. And then they went to go meet with this professor who might know about it, who might know about some crucial information, because she also wanted to know what they were fighting, because the whole spheres were going around the world and killed off a bunch of the population. The Master sent the Toclafane to take over the world for him, with him as their ruler. So I thought that was interesting to see, like, after all this time, the Master finally took over the world. But then how they managed to open up one of the Toclafane, the casing, and then inside, the being in there recognized Martha and was saying the skies are made of diamonds, which is something that at the end of the universe in Utopia, one of the children said to Martha. So she realized that they were all the future of the human race, because the Doctor made it so that the TARDIS could only travel between 2008, which I think was the year at the time, and the year 100 trillion, which was the end of the universe. So the Master actually went back there, and then he brought the future of humanity back so that they could avoid becoming extinct at the end of the universe. But then what the idea is that he then took the TARDIS and made it into a paradox machine, because if the future of humanity kills off their past, then they wouldn't exist. But then the TARDIS as a paradox machine holds that in place so that the paradox can then exist. And then what you saw was the Master made a public announcement to the world, knowing that Martha was watching, and then he aged the Doctor even further, saying, what if I suspended his ability to regenerate? That way we could see all 900 years of his life. So it would basically be, if the Doctor had never regenerated, what it would look like if he'd lived for 900 years in one body. So then you saw him, and he was like this tiny little creature. You could barely even recognize him, and it feels so pitiful to see the Doctor reduced to such a state. But then Martha took it as hope, knowing that the Doctor was still alive. And then she was trying to get back into London so that she could try to get on the ship. And you see her talking to these people about the Doctor, saying like, oh, I'm not the person who's responsible for all this. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for the Doctor. How he saved so many people's lives and he never asked to be thanked. But then the Master shows up because the professor that they'd seen earlier was concerned about her son. And to know if her son was okay, she snitched on Martha, saying that she knows about her whereabouts. So the Master came to try to, take Martha and say like, okay, it's done, you've lost. So then Martha decided to reveal herself so that none of the other people that were there would get killed. So then it ends with Martha on the Valiant, and all the people are there. The Doctor's in a cage, and they're watching as he's about to launch all these ships that could create wormholes in them, so that the Doctor or the Master can basically invade the universe with the Toclafane. And then you see Martha start laughing, because she's saying like the gun was never her real goal. It turns out that the Doctor actually told her to travel the world and tell everyone about him, let everyone know about who the Doctor is and how he saved everyone and how he's their only hope. And then it turns out that this program that the Master had created, called the Archangel Network, was a series of 15 satellites that binded the human race like telepathically, but it was so that the master could try to like enforce fear upon them so they wouldn't revolt. But then Martha had it so that whenever the countdown would end for when the missiles would launch initially, that then everyone in the world, every single person would think about the one word doctor. And in the meantime, for the past year, the doctor was saying that he integrated himself into the matrices of the network so that when everyone would be thinking about him, then he would be restored. So you see him back to his younger self. You see him, he's completely restored. And I thought that was so amazing how it looked like the master had almost won, but then how all of humanity knew who the doctor was. They knew that he was a hero, and then they managed to restore him. And he was saying, how could you say the human race is degenerate when they are able to do this? And then you see the master all terrified saying, no, this was finally my time to win. This isn't fair. But then the doctor was saying after all this that he still forgave him because he still considers the master his friend. And then the master tried to escape saying like, oh, I'll just blow up the earth instead. Like if I can't have it, then no one can. But then the doctor was saying, after all this time, I know you and I know that you wouldn't kill yourself. So then they're back on the Valiant and they're saying, okay, what are we going to do? Like the master... Like, we can't just let him live. But then the doctor was saying, no, we can't kill him. That's not the way. Then we'll just become like him. So then the doctor was saying, oh, I'll just keep him on the TARDIS. I'll let him travel with me so I can keep an eye on him. And, like, you saw that he actually wasn't upset about that because he was like, I have another Time Lord with me. I have someone to care for. But then it turns out that the master's wife, the master decided to get married to build a public image, ended up shooting him because of the fact that, like, she'd finally snapped out of it and realized how terrible he was. And then the master actually chose not to regenerate because he was saying, I would rather die than spend the rest of my life in prison with you. And then you see how heartbroken the doctor is because of all of the stuff that the doctor and the master have been through. And he's like, oh, I finally have another Time Lord. I'm like, we're the only two left. Please don't go. But then the master's like, oh, I win. Like, after all this time, I guess I win. He considers his death a victory over the doctor. And I just thought that was so sad. But then also the bonus at the end, how it turns out that Martha chose to leave the doctor. Basically, any other companion was forced to leave the doctor. Martha was like the one companion who genuinely chose to leave the doctor without consequence. It wasn't, oh, she's going to be stuck in time, or like stuck back in time for the rest of forever, or like she chose to straight up be with someone else where she can never see him again. She chose to leave the doctor without consequence. And I thought that was really cool how for so long she always thought she was like second best to the doctor, but then she finally was like, you know what, I am good. I don't need the doctor to tell me what to do. I can make decisions on my own. I managed to save the whole world. And I thought that was really cool seeing Martha leave, but like on better terms where it wasn't as sad. So I just think that the way they built up the Series 3 finale was actually really good. And I just realized that I was talking about how Series 4 was going to be number 1, but I think I just realized that Series 3 might actually be number 1 because I just spent so long explaining it and how good it was. So Series 3 might be number 1, but Series 4 is definitely really close because the fact that you have Rose, Martha, Jack, Jackie, Mickey, Sarah Jane, and then it's like almost a bit of a crossover between or among Doctor Who, Torchwood, and the Sarah Jane Adventures. And I really like how Donna was the most important person in the whole wide world, or in the universe, because of the fact that she became the Dr. Donna, and without her, all of reality would have been destroyed by Davros and the Daleks. But, like I said, I feel like I spent so long explaining Series 3, I kind of got to say that maybe it was my favorite finale, just because of the fact that it was so good. So let's just go ahead and move into my favorite arc overall. I think that, like how I explained it, Series 3 had a really good arc leading up to the Master. Series 4 had a really good one leading up to Donna and the Doctor, all that, and the Daleks returning. And then I like Series 7 more so the second half. Well, Series 7 in general is good, but I feel like the second half they really focus on the emphasis of the Doctor and his potential future and the importance of his name. And then, like, beyond that, the arcs are kind of more subtle, but I feel like number 1 for me, my favorite series overall when it comes to its arc has got to be Series 6, because it's just such a huge one where it starts with the Doctor dying, and then that's like the whole thing about the whole series, like the Doctor dying at the Lake Silencio, the silence, and then how they elaborate way more on River, how it's like, oh, she marries the Doctor, but she also kills the Doctor. I know that sounds kind of jumbled, but like how I explained earlier, in The Impossible Astronaut, you see it start with the doctor dying on the Wake Silencio. But then a younger doctor shows up because it turns out that by the end of the series, the the doctor who is about to die invited Amy and Rory, River, Canton, Everett, Delaware the Third. There's only about three of them, and then his younger self, because it turns out that he knew how this whole thing was going, because it was a big long circle, and I feel like that was truly the best arc, because you could really see that it was meant to be a whole arc where everything in the series mattered in some way, because he knew that from experience that he needed to invite his younger self to get everything started, where they go back to 1969, they find out what's going on there, how they know Canton, and their first encounter with the Silence. And then how by the time it's done, like, they all part ways, like, Amy and Rory start traveling with the younger doctor again, and then how they continue on from there on out. And then, like, just the subtle things that you would see, like, at the end of the episode Day of the Moon, you saw River kiss the doctor, and it turns out that was the first time the doctor kissed River, but therefore that was the last time that River kissed the doctor, so that was kind of a subtle moment. That was our heartbreaker. And then in The Doctor's Wife, whenever briefly in the human body, the TARDIS told Rory the only water in the forest is the river, which you find out later in A Good Man Goes to War, is how River is actually Amy and Rory's child. But then it turns out that the Silence, along with Madame Kavarian, ended up, like, abducting Amy's baby because it actually had part Time Lord DNA. It was conceived in the TARDIS while it was in the Time Vortex, and then they, altered her DNA a little bit so that she would be part Time Lord, because they decided to make the baby into the perfect weapon to kill the Doctor, because they knew that eventually one day the Doctor would be on the fields of Trenzalore, where something terrible would happen, and they thought, okay, instead of letting him get to Trenzalore and let it happen, let's kill him before he gets to Trenzalore, excuse me. But then it turns out that, like I said, River is actually Amy and Rory's baby, but she regenerated. That's why at the end of Day of the Moon, you saw this little girl, and she ends up regenerating. So then you're really confused by that. And then later in the next episode, Let's Kill Hitler, you see Amy and Rory's childhood friend, Mel's. And then they're like, oh, we named her after our daughter. But then it turns out that actually is their daughter, and that's after she regenerated, presumably the first time. And then she found them, but they never actually got to raise their baby, but they grew up with their baby as a friend. And then she accidentally gets shot by Hitler, that's a whole thing, and then she regenerates into River. So this is right at the moment where they first meet River. But they have, like, she has no idea who River Song is. Like, she just thinks of herself as Melody Pond. All she knows is that she's supposed to kill the Doctor. And then she ends up kissing him, but she had this special lipstick on that poisoned him. And there was no way that he could actually try to heal himself. Like, he was on the verge of dying. He couldn't regenerate. Like, he was going to die. And then, like, he was saying, I don't care if I'm going to die. I still need to help River, because this is very early days for her. Like, this is still her before she became River, so I need to help her find her way. And then he ends up... But then at the same time, there's this machine run by people called the Tesselecta, where they go through and they try to, punish all these war criminals at the end of their life for what they've done. And then they end up finding Melody Pond, aka River Song, and they end up trying to get her because she committed the worst crime ever, killing the Doctor. And then they tried to punish her, but then the Doctor said, no, stop. Like, I don't care what she did. She's still someone that I care about. And then eventually River comes to the realization that she is River Song. She's this person that the Doctor trusts so much. Like, she's someone that the Doctor places above everyone else, because they had the Tesselecta show her River Song, and she realized that's who she is. But then what she does is, the Doctor had died, but then she uses the rest of her regeneration energy to bring him back, but that's therefore causing it so that she can't regenerate again. So now she's stuck as River Song until she dies, which she does later, spoiler alert. And then I like how it builds up later with, like, the whole tick-tock goes the clock till River kills the Doctor, all that childish song stuff. And then in closing time, how you see the Doctor took the Stetson from Craig, so that's why he had a Stetson in Utah. And then you see him take the envelopes, which he sent out to everyone, because then he goes to Utah, and then he finally decides that he needs to die. So he's like going through trying to figure out why the Silence want him dead, and he realizes why. And at first he's thinking, I'm still going to try to run away from it. I want to, like, there's no reason I can't. But then something heartbreaking happens where the doctor gets a call saying that the Brigadier, Sir Brigadier Alistair Gordon Lethbridge Stewart, had passed away. And then the doctor feels heartbroken over that because he never went to go see him one more time. You know, he feels really bad about it because he never went to go see the Brigadier, his old friend. Like, he spent so much time running away that he never took the time to just slow down and go see his old friend. So he feels really guilty, and he's like, okay, it's time. I can't keep running from this now. So he decides to accept his death. And then you find out that the astronaut on the wake that killed the doctor was River. But then this time around, it turns out that she was able to change the fixed point of the doctor dying, where she ends up missing him. But then that changes a fixed point. So then the universe basically collapses, where then all of time and space are happening at once. But it's still, like, the eye of the storm is right there. It's still going to fade out at some point. So then you see the doctor trying to convince River to go back and kill him. And she's saying, no, I can't do it. So you see that they were building this distress beacon to try to get people to help the doctor, saying, like, all you had to do is ask. No one wants you to die. All these people care so much about you. But then the doctor's saying, like, look, I understand that I have to die. I'm sorry. So then, like, he convinces River, and before he gets killed, they decide to get married, because he's thinking that'll at least be some consolation to River. And then he's saying, like, I'm going to tell you something, and you can't tell anyone. And then he claims that he told her his name. But then you see them kiss, get married, and then time reasserts itself, where then River goes back and kills the doctor. But then later you found out that the whole time the doctor actually came up with a plan to avoid it, where the Tesselecta is something that can change its appearance. So what he did was he actually had the Tesselecta take his form, so that, like, he was inside of the Tesselecta, and then whenever River killed him, that set forth a fixed point in time. But then it turns out that, you know, the doctor was inside the Tesselecta and he was fine. So I just thought that was so amazing how this big thing, it's like the doctor came up with this really clever way of getting out of it. I thought that was so cool how the whole series revolved around the doctor's death and the doctor's relationship to River. And then how, in a way, then, like, Amy realizes that now she's the doctor's mother-in-law. So it's like now the doctor's actually traveling with family. I just thought that was really amazing. I thought that was the best example of what a series arc should be. I just liked it so much. I thought that the writing for so many of the episodes, even the ones that didn't tie into the arc, were really good. One of my favorite episodes overall, the doctor's wife, is in that series, so that definitely helps out. But overall, I just think that when it comes to series premieres, I gotta give to series 9. Series finales, it's definitely a toss-up between 4 and 3, but I feel like I kind of explained 3 a lot more anyhow. And then series arcs, it's gotta go to series 6. So that's basically going to be it. I talked for a long time, a lot longer. I freaking went on for series 3. I did not think I would do that much, but hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hopefully you want to see more videos. So if you enjoyed, make sure you hit that like button down below to show some support to the channel. Comment your thoughts so you can explain your opinions on premieres, finales, arcs, and subscribe if you are new to the channel, and ring that bell to be notified about more uploads. I'll try to do more Doctor Who uploads, but it's also a lot of Pokemon. But if you like that, that's cool. If you only like the Doctor Who videos, you can subscribe for those as well. But I will see you guys next time. Bye.